Let them come.
When that scene came on screen, my friend and I, we were sitting in front of like an 11-year-old boy with his parents, and the little boy busted up laughing at that part, which made me and my friend laugh hysterically. I was like, you know what? Maybe we're in for a good time. Hey everybody, welcome back to Chandler Burton Movies and Video Games. I hope y'all are doing well today. Today on the channel, we are reviewing the brand new film that just dropped into theaters this weekend. It is going to be Transformers: Rise of the Beast. This is going to be a non-spoiler review. Believe it or not, there are some things in this movie that would be considered very spoilery. Some things I didn't understand, and our audience was like freaking out. So I was like, well, that's actually kind of cool. So again, I'm going to keep this non-spoiler for those who do want to go check this film out here, since it is brand new. But with that being said, let's jump right into the review. Returning to the action and spectacle that have captured moviegoers around the world, Transformers: Rise of the Beast will take audiences on a 90s globe-trotting adventure with the Autobots and introduce a whole new faction of Transformers, the Maximals, to join them as allies in the existing battle for Earth. Directed by Stephen Caple Jr. and starring Anthony Ramos and Dominique Fishback. So that's just the official synopsis from Paramount Pictures. I actually really like Stephen Caple Jr. He directed Creed 2. He also did a movie called The Land, which I have not seen. But again, Creed 2 was really, really good. So I was excited to see what, he could do, with a bigger budget, a bigger playground, so to say. And I'm going to be honest with you guys here, I've been watching Transformers since I was 14 years old. I remember seeing the first one in theaters, and I think I liked it a lot. I don't really remember much of it. I haven't seen those movies in a while, but as we all know, those movies got progressively worse with each film, particularly the last film, which was Transformers: The Last Night of the Michael Bay movies. That was one of the worst films I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, that film would be in the top 10 worst movies for me ever. It was so lazy. It was so bad. The story made no sense. The acting was terrible. It was just 2.5 hours of just nothing. And, when it comes to Transformers, sometimes you just want to walk in, kind of turn your brain off, and just watch robots fight each other. Even that didn't entertain me, and so I was really concerned going into this new era of Transformers. But luckily, Bumblebee, which is a really, really good film, so good that I even bought it when it came back out on Blu-ray, I really enjoyed that. So I was really excited to see what they're going to be doing with this brand new Transformers. This is going to be the 7th Transformer film ever made. How does it hold up? You know what, brother? It actually ain't that bad. Look, there is no way that this movie is going to win any sort of awards, when it comes to like Oscar season. Maybe for like the special effects department, because again, these movies look really cool, but it's not going to win for best storytelling. It's not going to change the game when it comes to cinema, but I think these kind of movies actually are important, because a lot of us do struggle like mentally with a lot of things. After like a long 5-day work week, you kind of just want to go to the movie, shut off your brain for a couple of hours, and just go have fun. I experienced that this week. I've been working so much nonstop that it was just nice to sit down in a nice cool theater with some popcorn, my fruit punch, and just watch a crazy robot action movie. So I actually do think these kind of movies are important. And I will say this as well. I think this movie, I don't think it's as good as Bumblebee, but I think this is my second favorite Transformers movie. I actually like it better, I think, than the original from what I can remember. Those Michael Bay movies are hard to watch, especially Revenge of the Fallen and The Last Night. Like, those two movies in particular are really rough for me to watch. But this one was actually really enjoyable. It's not perfect by any means, but let's go in and break it down through the pros and cons. And I would say pro number one, of course, just get the typical stuff out of the way, is the action. Now, I know a lot of people like Michael Bay's action. You see it like in the Transformers movies, you see it in the first two Bad Boys movies, which again, I think are good. But my problem with his action is that a lot of it's just shot up close, and sometimes it's hard to tell what's going on, because again, all the Autobots and Decepticons, everything like looked the same in those movies. So I'm like, I don't know who's on whose side. I can't figure this out. There's so much going on. I think what's really cool about this movie is that with the camera, you can really tell what's going on. There's a lot of like action that happens in this movie, a lot of car chases, a lot of big battle sequences in the film, and you can see everything clearly, and I really like that. You want to see what's going on. You want to see what your characters are up to and try to engage them, as much as possible. So again, I think the action in this movie is really good, particularly the third act. Again, I don't want to spoil anything when it comes to what happens, but what's kind of cool about it is like they're fighting against like time, like if they don't do something in a certain amount of time, something's going to happen. And so you actually do feel a sense of like, you know, like, okay, like if they don't finish this in time, something's going to happen. And it's not just like mindless action, like they're actually fighting towards something. And I actually really like that. Again, I like that they added that element to the movie, kind of keep you on the edge of your seat, like maybe they won't make out of this. So that was pretty cool. Also, Mega Man shows up in the film, and that is not a spoiler. You'll know exactly what I'm talking about when I say Mega Man shows up. Trust me. That last battle sequence is incredible. That was probably one of my favorite parts of the film. Really good action. It looks like they were on the battlefield for Avengers Endgame, dude. Absolutely insane action. Super good throughout. I would also say the music is really good as well. Now, this takes place in the 90s, so there's a lot of hip-hop and those types of things, and music I think can actually tell a really good story, so I think they incorporated the music pretty well. Like, I don't think it was ever, like, you know, shoehorned in there. Like, there's a couple of scenes when they play certain music with certain characters, I'm like, you know what, that actually fits. I actually had a good time with that, and I knew most of the songs, so I was like, dude, you know what, I actually like the music a lot. I thought it actually added to the story, made you feel like you were more in the 90s. And the music is a great like time machine to help you like relive that. So I thought that was really, really cool what they did with the music. I thought that was really, really cool. I will say this is kind of a pro and kind of a negative. The human characters are pretty good. I feel like with the main character, Anthony Ramos, who again, he was in The Heights and he was absolutely fantastic. His character probably gets the most development, but it really, I don't think was needed because again, like, I feel like with these Transformers movies, they really try to focus a lot on these human characters where it's like, okay, I understand that you got to have some other elements in the film besides robots hitting each other, but to me, it's just a little uninteresting, and I really didn't really find his story arc to be all that fantastic. I know until the very end, I thought it was pretty cool. I think the best actor in the film was actually his little brother. I don't know his name offhand, but he was really good. He was like 11 years old, and you know, it's kind of your typical, like, you know, he was in the military, he did something bad in the military, and you know, he just has to, he can't get a job because of what he did. And I was like, that's kind of interesting, but it's like, does it really need to fit into this Transformers movie? Sometimes I forget. I'm like, is this Transformers or is this like something else? So it's little things like that where you're like, okay, it's a little too much, but overall, I think this is, you know, much better than the Michael Bay ones, as I said before. And you know, you care mostly about the human characters. Sometimes you're like, okay, why are they here? What are they doing? But overall, the human characters are okay in this film. They're not great, but they're definitely getting better with each film. I would also say some of my other pros is, again, I love the Autobots in here, but I really love the Maxwells in this. Optimus Primal is awesome. I will say some of the other characters in the Maxwells were a little, you know, underdeveloped. You know, I feel like Optimus Primal was like the main guy they really wanted to focus on. So there are some characters that kind of get a little bit of like, you know, a backseat, you know, recognition. But overall, that was really cool to introduce them in the film. I have no nostalgia, and I've never seen the Beast Wars, you know, cartoon. And so I feel like, you know, with the story and what they're trying to do, I thought they integrated it pretty well. And so for me, as a very casual Transformers fan, didn't really grow up on them, I thought it was pretty cool. The Maximals were super awesome. And then honestly, the biggest thing I would say is that I really like Mirage in this film. Mirage was awesome, played by Pete Davidson. I know a lot of people were concerned about that, but again, he was so much fun. I was telling my friends, like, dude, this would be a guy I hang out with like on a regular basis because he's really that cool. Super good stuff. Like, those are my main pros that I have with this movie. So as I mentioned, I do have a couple of cons with this movie. Number one, I just feel like, again, kind of contradicts myself here. I feel sometimes the human characters, they just kind of get in the way of the main story. Like, I'm not even going to talk about the main story, what they're trying to do, because again, some people want to go into this completely blind, so I'm going to try to do my best not to just say even what happens. But like some of the human characters, I'm just like Dominique Fishback, she did pretty good in the film, she was fine, but I just felt like, again, her character was so forced in there that I was like, to me, it just felt so weird. They try to set up some stuff with her and Anthony Ramos, like, are they friends, are they lovers, like those kind of things where I'm just like, all right, like, I felt like the movie could not decide what it wanted to do at the end, so we're like, yeah, we'll just tease people about it, but it's not like a tease that you would get excited for. You're like, I feel like the filmmakers didn't know what to do. Also, this is another big problem with a lot of movies like this, that the story is just so convenient, where it's just like, okay, we're just going to go to Peru and we're going to go into this thing to get this thing, and that there's going to be there's not going to be no trials, doing this thing. They're just gonna walk in and the thing's gonna be right there and we're gonna just go from there. Like, it's very convenient storytelling where it's like, I feel like, again, they didn't know how to tell that part of the story. So like, you know what, we're just gonna be like, okay, walk in there and that's what you'll need to do. Like, for me, like, a story's got to connect to A to B to C all the way back around. And so I feel like this movie had a hard time like telling its story in a kind of cohesive way. There's a lot of stuff that happens in this movie. It seems overcomplicated, but once you watch it, it does make sense. But I just felt like there were too many convenient moments in the story for it to really make a good story. And again, I'm a big story guy, and I don't expect anything crazy from these movies, as I've said. But again, I've seen movies like with great stories that are kind of like out of the realms of reality. And so sometimes I'm like, okay, like, the story's not great, and it definitely a little moment, like, it's just very plot convenient for these characters. And then honestly, this may be a hot take, but Optimus Prime actually really irritated me in this movie. He was just kind of a drag this entire movie. Like, I understand his motive, I understand what he's trying to do. He's trying to help his people, he's trying, you know, he's trying. But it just came off as like so irritating to me. He had a couple of cool moments in there that I really enjoyed when he was going against Scourge, who again was played by Peter Dinklage, who I thought was actually really cool. Did not know that. Scourge was actually a really good villain. But overall, man, I don't have like a ton of cons with the films, but again, the cons that I have do weigh pretty heavy. And so that's why I don't hate this movie. I like this movie, but I don't love it. Overall, man, if I was a 10-year-old boy, this movie would be the greatest thing of all time. As a 29-year-old guy, I would say this movie is definitely fine. Again, there's actually some stuff that happens in this movie at the very end where I'm just like, I don't understand what's happening. But again, our audience was going insane over it, and they're like, that's so cool. And I was like, I don't really get this. I don't know what's going on. So we'll see what happens. You know, we'll see what happens with what they do here. But for me, this is the perfect movie to see during the day, like during the summer. Like, obviously, you know, kids are going to be out of school. This would be a great matinee film to entertain some young boys for a couple of hours. And with that being said, I actually enjoyed this movie. Again, the story is pretty thin, but the action is really cool. There are some really cool moments in this film. I'd say the last action sequence, it was awesome. Like, it was honestly like the level of like Avengers Endgame. Like, I thought it was really epic. Again, it was shot so well. You could see all the action happening. Again, there's also a couple of, you know, like plot threads in the movie that just don't really make much sense. And again, some things that happen that I personally didn't agree with. But overall, man, this film was fun. I had a good time. I didn't hate it. Would I see it again? I don't know. Maybe. But for watching it the first time, I thought it was pretty good. I'm going to give Transformers Rise of the Beast a solid 7 out of 10. As I said, I think it's a really good matinee film. You know, take your kids to go see it. There's really nothing too inappropriate about it except the big action set pieces. So this movie is way more appropriate than the Michael Bay ones, for sure. Not sexualizing women, not swearing a whole bunch. This is a pretty, I'd say, pretty appropriate movie for kids as well. So again, I think a solid 7 is perfect for this film.